I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked into my parents' house and saw my brother Daniel's Mercedes parked in the circular driveway. He never came to Sunday dinners anymore, not since he'd made partner at his law firm and decided our family traditions were beneath his schedule. But there it was, gleaming black paint reflecting the sunset, and my stomach dropped in a way I couldn't quite explain yet. The smell of my mom's pot roast hit me as I pushed through the front door, but instead of the usual warmth, the house felt cold. Clinical. Like walking into a doctor's office right before they deliver bad news. I could hear voices in the dining room, my father's deep baritone, my mother's clipped responses, and Daniel's laugh. That particular laugh he reserved for when he was about to win an argument. "Emma!" My mother's voice rang out, too bright, too forced. "We're in here, sweetheart." I set down my canvas bag filled with ungraded essays and walked toward the dining room, my worn flats barely making a sound on the hardwood floors. The contrast between my thrift store cardigan and the scene I was about to walk into would have been almost comical if I'd known what was coming. They were all seated already, Mom, Dad, Daniel, and his wife Victoria, who looked like she'd stepped out of a country club magazine. For sets of eyes tracked me as I entered, and not one of them was smiling the way they used to. My father's expression was the worst, that particular blend of disappointment and determination that I'd only seen once before, when he'd fired his business partner of 20 years. "Sit down, Emma," Dad said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Not at the head of the table where I usually sat. Across from him. Like an interview. Like a trial. I sat, and the leather cushion felt too hard beneath me. "What's going on? Why does this feel like an intervention?" "Because it is one," Daniel said, and he wasn't even trying to soften it. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over Victoria's shoulders, his Rolex catching the light from the chandelier. "We're worried about you, sis. We've been worried for a while now." My mother set down her wine glass with a soft clink that somehow sounded like a gavel. "Emma, honey, you're 32 years old. You're still renting that tiny apartment in the city. You're still driving that," she paused, searching for a kind word and failing to find one. "That car from college. And you're still teaching at that public school." The way she said public school made it sound like a disease. "I love teaching," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "My students make $38,000 a year." My father pulled out a folder from beside his plate, and my chest tightened. He'd prepared documents. This wasn't a dinner. This was a business meeting. "I have the numbers right here, Emma. After taxes, after your rent, after student loan payments, you're barely surviving. You're one emergency away from financial ruin." I stared at the folder, at the neat rows of figures that represented my life reduced to a balance sheet. "I'm not asking you for money." "No, you're not," Victoria chimed in, her voice syrupy with false concern. "And that's admirable, really. But Emma, there's a difference between independence and stubbornness. Your parents have connections. Your father could get you into corporate training. 6 figures easy. Or Daniel knows people in educational consulting. But instead, you're changing elementary school kids' lives for poverty wages." The contempt in her voice when she said changing lives made my hands curl into fists under the table. "Those kids need good teachers," I said, meeting her eyes directly. "Most of them come from homes where no one's ever gone to college. Where no one's ever told them they're smart or capable. I'm not just teaching them math and reading, I'm showing them that someone believes in them." My mother sighed, the kind of sigh that said she'd heard this speech before and remained unconvinced. "That's very noble, sweetheart. But nobility doesn't pay for retirement. It doesn't buy a house. It doesn't attract a quality husband." There it was. The real issue, finally surfacing like rotten floorboards. "Your mother and I have been discussing this," my father said, and his tone shifted into the one he used in boardrooms. "All business. No emotion. We've been supporting you indirectly for years. The occasional check for Christmas, birthday money, that loan for your car repair that we told you not to pay back. But we've realized we're not helping you. We're enabling a fantasy." The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of the table. "What are you saying?" Daniel leaned forward, and for just a moment, I saw something almost like pity in his eyes. "Almost. They're cutting you off, Emma. Completely. No more safety net. We've set up trust funds for Daniel's children," my mother added quickly, as if that would soften the blow. "And we'll do the same when you have children of your own, of course. But until you make better choices about your career, we can't in good conscience continue to subsidize this lifestyle." I looked around the table at these people who'd raised me, who'd taught me that success meant corner offices and stock portfolios, who were now looking at me like I was a failed investment. "This isn't about money," I said slowly, understanding crystallizing with each word. "This is about you being embarrassed. You're embarrassed that your daughter is just a teacher." My father's jaw tightened, and I knew I'd hit the mark. "Last month at the Richardsons' charity gala, someone asked about you," my mother said, her voice tight. "I had to tell them you were teaching 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary. Do you know what Patricia Richardson said?" She said, "Oh, how sweet. I didn't know Emma couldn't get into graduate school. As if teaching was your fallback option. You're a failure." "Jesus, Mom. Watch your language," she snapped. "We raised you better than this, Emma. We gave you every opportunity. Private schools, college tuition, connections to powerful people. And you threw it all away to make a teacher's salary and live like you're still in grad school." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm not living like I'm in grad school. I'm living like an adult who made a choice about what matters to me. I'm sorry that choice embarrasses you. I'm sorry I'm not Daniel with his partnership, and his McMansion, and his wife who thinks volunteering at a food bank makes her a philanthropist." Victoria's face went scarlet, but Daniel just shook his head. "You're proving their point right now, Emma. You're being defensive because deep down, you know they're right. You're wasting your potential." "My potential?" I grabbed my bag, essays spilling out onto the floor. "You want to know about potential? I had a student last year, Tyler Rodriguez, whose dad was in prison and whose mom worked 3 jobs. Everyone said he'd drop out by middle school. But I stayed after school with him 3 days a week for an entire year. And you know what? He just got accepted into the advanced math program at the magnet school. His mom cried when she found out. She told me I saved her son's life. I looked at each of them, these strangers in my family's skin. That's not wasting potential. That's using it. But you wouldn't understand that, because the only value you recognize is the kind that shows up on a tax return." My father stood now, his 6'2" frame towering over the table. "Then you'll understand our position. As of today, we're done. No more checks. No more loans. No more family vacations on our dime. You want to be independent? Fine. Be independent. But don't come crying to us when reality finally sets in." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. "Emma, please," my mother said, and for just a second she looked sad. Actually sad. "Just think about it. Think about what we're saying. You could have so much more than this." I picked up my essays from the floor, my hands shaking. "I already have more than you'll ever understand." I walked out of that house knowing I'd never be welcome there the same way again. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt like the end of something I'd never get back. I sat in my car. The Honda Civic they'd mocked, the one with 140,000 miles and a check engine light that came on every few months, and I let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I wiped my eyes, started the engine, and drove back to my 1-bedroom apartment to grade essays. I had no idea that in 72 hours, everything would change in a way that none of us, especially not my family, could have possibly predicted. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. Monday morning arrived with the particular cruelty of a 6 a.m. alarm and the knowledge that my family had essentially disowned me. I'd spent Sunday night lying awake, replaying the dinner conversation, oscillating between rage and grief. But 3rd graders don't care about your personal drama, and I had 24 of them waiting for me at Jefferson Elementary. The school building was a testament to budget cuts and bureaucratic neglect. Peeling paint, outdated textbooks, a playground that probably violated modern safety codes. But inside room 207, I'd created something different. World maps covered the water-stained walls. Student artwork hung from strings across the ceiling. A reading corner with bean bags I'd bought with my own money sat in the corner, filled with books from garage sales and teacher discount stores. "Miss Emma." Tyler Rodriguez barreled through the door at 8:15, his backpack nearly bigger than he was. "Guess what? My mom got your email about the math thing, and she cried again." "She never cries, Miss Emma." "Never." I crouched down to his level, my earlier misery temporarily forgotten. "That's because she's proud of you, Tyler. You worked so hard. She said you're the best teacher in the whole world." He dropped his voice to a whisper. "Is that true?" I laughed, the first genuine laugh since Saturday. "I don't know about the whole world, but I try my best for you guys." He grinned and ran to hang up his backpack, and I felt the familiar warmth spread through my chest, the same feeling that had driven me to teaching in the first place. This was why the money didn't matter. This was why my parents' disappointment, as much as it hurt, couldn't shake my foundation. But the universe wasn't done testing that foundation yet. My phone buzzed during reading time. A text from Daniel. Mom's upset. She didn't sleep last night. At least call her. I turned my phone face down and helped Alicia Martinez sound out a difficult word. Another buzz. Another text. I ignored it. At lunch, sitting in the cramped teacher's lounge with my homemade sandwich, I finally checked my messages. 7 texts. 4 from my mother. 2 from Daniel. 1 from my father that simply read, "Your pride will be your downfall." "You look like someone killed your dog," said Janet Kim, the 4th-grade teacher who'd become my closest friend at the school. She sat down across from me with her cafeteria tray. What happened? I told her everything. The dinner. The ultimatum. The disownment. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to something that looked almost like recognition. "My parents did something similar when I became a teacher," she said quietly. "They're Korean immigrants. They worked in a dry cleaning business for 30 years so I could go to college and become a doctor or lawyer. When I told them I wanted to teach, my dad didn't speak to me for 6 months. What changed?" She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Time. Reality. Eventually they saw that I was happy, that I was good at what I did, that my life had meaning even if it didn't have status." She paused. "But it took years, Emma. Years. And it still hurts sometimes when my mom makes comments about my cousin the surgeon." I pushed my sandwich away, appetite gone. I don't know if I have years. What if they never come around? What if I just lost my family because I wanted to make a difference instead of making money? Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then they lost you. And that's their tragedy, not yours." But it didn't feel like their tragedy as the week wore on. It felt like mine. Tuesday brought an unexpected car repair bill. $8.47 for a transmission issue that couldn't wait. The money I'd been saving for summer programs for my students evaporated in an instant. My landlord called Wednesday about a lease renewal with a rent increase. $150 more per month starting in June. Thursday, I got an email from my student loan servicer about a payment that was due in 2 weeks. I sat at my kitchen table Thursday night, surrounded by bills and bank statements, doing math that no amount of budgeting could make work. My father's words echoed in my head. One emergency away from financial ruin. He'd been right about that, at least. My phone rang at 9 p.m. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called back immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, I answered. "Emma, thank God. I've been so worried." "I'm fine, Mom." "You're not fine. Don't lie to me. I know you, sweetheart. You're probably sitting there surrounded by bills, realizing that maybe we had a point. Is that why you called? To say I told you so?" A long pause. Then, in a softer voice. "I called because you're my daughter and I love you. Even when you make choices I don't understand." Something in my chest cracked at that. "Then why does your love feel so conditional?" "It's not conditional." But her voice wavered. "We just want better for you. We want you to have security, comfort, a future that isn't constantly worrying about money." "I have a future, Mom. It just looks different than the one you planned for me." Another pause. I could hear my father's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "Your father wants to know if you've thought about the consulting job. Daniel's friend at McKinsey is still willing to interview you." And just like that, the crack in my chest sealed over. Tell Dad that I'd rather eat ramen for the rest of my life than spend 8 hours a day in a conference room pretending to care about corporate synergy. I hung up before she could respond. Friday afternoon, Principal Henderson called me into his office. My stomach dropped. Friday afternoon summons were never good news. Budget cuts? Teacher evaluations? I ran through every possible disaster as I walked down the hallway to the administrative wing. "Sit down, Emma," he said, and his tone was unreadable. He was a large man with gentle eyes, a former teacher himself who actually understood what happened in classrooms. "I have some interesting news." I sat, gripping the armrests of the chair. "If this is about the supply budget, I can explain." "It's not about the budget." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite parse. "Do you know what today is?" "Friday. It's the Governor's Education Summit. He's announcing the state's Teacher Excellence Awards at the Capitol right now. The ceremony started an hour ago." I stared at him confused. "Okay. Emma, your name was submitted for the award. I submitted it myself, along with documentation of Tyler Rodriguez's progress, your reading intervention program, and testimonials from parents. I didn't tell you because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because there were over 2,000 nominees statewide. The odds of winning are essentially zero. I didn't want to get your hopes up. My heart was suddenly beating very fast. Why are you telling me now? He turned his computer monitor toward me, and I saw a live stream of the state capitol building, a podium with the state seal, and Governor Mitchell standing in front of a crowd of people. Because the governor is about to announce the winners. 5 teachers statewide. And Emma. He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that changed the air in the room. I received a call from the state education department 20 minutes ago. They wanted to confirm your contact information. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What does that mean? I whispered. It means you should watch this. He turned up the volume. Governor Mitchell was in the middle of a speech about educational excellence, about teachers who went above and beyond, about the importance of investing in public education. His voice was strong, practiced, the kind of voice that came from years of public speaking. These teachers represent the very best of our state, he was saying. They work in underfunded schools with overcrowded classrooms. They spend their own money on supplies. They stay late, arrive early, and never give up on their students. They are quite simply heroes. My hands were shaking. Principal Henderson handed me a tissue, and I realized I was crying without having noticed when I'd started. The first award goes to Jennifer Walsh from Riverside High School in the Northern District. I barely heard the next 3 names. My entire existence had narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat and the governor's voice coming through the computer speakers. And finally, Governor Mitchell said, pausing for effect the way politicians do, our 5th award winner comes from right here in the Capital District. This teacher took a student who was reading 2 grade levels below average and, through dedicated after-school tutoring and an innovative reading intervention program she designed herself, helped him achieve grade-level proficiency in just 1 school year. That same student is now enrolled in an advanced mathematics program, a feat his previous teachers thought was impossible. Oh my God! This teacher represents everything we value about public education. Dedication, excellence, and an unwavering belief in the potential of every single child. This wasn't happening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Emma Thompson from Jefferson Elementary School. The office went completely silent except for the sound of applause coming through the computer speakers. Principal Henderson was grinning. I was frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. The governor was still speaking. Emma, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, I want you to know that this award comes with a $50,000 grant for your classroom, a full scholarship to the State University's Master of Education program, and the designation as one of our state master teachers. Your work is changing lives, and we see you. My phone started buzzing, then buzzing again. And again. I pulled it out with trembling hands and saw notifications flooding my screen. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, text messages, emails. The local news had already picked up the story. Governor honors local teachers in emotional ceremony. And then I saw it, a text from my brother Daniel. Just 3 words, but they hit like a freight train. Turn on Channel 7. I didn't turn on Channel 7 immediately. I couldn't. I sat in Principal Henderson's office, staring at my phone as it continued its frantic buzzing. Each notification another ripple in a reality that had completely transformed in the span of 5 minutes. Emma. Principal Henderson's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you okay? Was I okay? The governor, the actual governor, had just said my name on live television. He'd praised my work. He'd given me more money than I made in an entire year. He'd validated every choice that my family had spent Saturday night condemning. And they'd heard it. Based on Daniel's text, they'd heard everything. I need to make a call, I said, standing up so fast the chair rolled backward and hit the wall. I need to go home. Is that okay? Can I leave? He laughed, a warm, proud sound. Emma, school ended 20 minutes ago. You can absolutely go home. But first, he stood and extended his hand. Congratulations. This is the most deserved recognition I've seen in my 30 years in education. You're extraordinary at what you do, and I'm honored to have you at this school. I shook his hand, my own still trembling. Then I did something completely unlike me. I hugged him. Thank you for nominating me. Thank you for believing in what I do. Always, he said simply. The walk to my car felt surreal. Other teachers were leaving the building, and several of them stopped me, having already seen the news online. Janet Kim actually screamed when she saw me, then pulled me into a hug that nearly knocked me over. Emma! Oh my God, Emma! I'm watching the replay right now. The governor said your name. You won. How are you this calm? I'm not calm, I managed. I'm in shock. I think I'm having an out-of-body experience. She grabbed my shoulders and looked me straight in the eyes. Listen to me. This is everything you deserve. Everything. Don't let anyone, especially your family, make you feel like this is anything less than phenomenal. But even as she said it, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and we both stared at it. You don't have to answer, Janet said. But I did. I had to. Because whatever happened next, I needed to face it directly. Hello, Mom. Emma. Her voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Emma, sweetheart, we were watching. The governor said your name. On television. He said your name and they showed your photo and he said you won an award and She was crying. Actually crying. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I leaned against my car, my legs suddenly unsteady. You're sorry? We had no idea. We didn't understand. Your father and we were just watching the news and the governor started talking about teachers, and then he said your name and... She took a shaky breath. He called you a hero, Emma. He said you were changing lives. He said you represent the best of public education. Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest. I told you that's what I was doing. At dinner. I told you about Tyler. I told you about the difference I was making. I know. God, Emma, I know. I heard you, but I didn't really hear you. I was so focused on the money and the status, and what people would think that I couldn't see what you were actually accomplishing. Her voice broke. Your father wants to talk to you. We both want to talk to you. Can you come over? Please. I closed my eyes and for just a moment I let myself imagine it. Going back to that house. Sitting at that table. Accepting their apology and their newfound pride, knowing it had taken a governor's announcement to make them see what should have been obvious all along. No, I said quietly. What? I said no, Mom. I'm not coming over. A long silence. Then, Emma, please. We want to make this right. We want to celebrate with you. Your father is already opening champagne. You want to celebrate the award. Not me. Not the work I've been doing for the past 8 years. The award. I opened my car door and got inside, suddenly desperate for privacy. Do you know what the worst part of Sunday night was? It wasn't being cut off. It wasn't the money. It was sitting at that table and realizing that my own parents had no idea who I actually was. You knew Daniel. You knew his partnership and his salary and his reputation. But me? You just knew my disappointing paycheck. That's not fair. Isn't it? Mom, the student the governor mentioned? Tyler? I told you about him on Sunday. I told you how his mom cried. And do you remember what Victoria said? She said I was changing elementary school kids' lives for poverty wages. Like it was pathetic. Like the lives of those kids didn't matter because their parents weren't rich. My mother's breathing was uneven on the other end of the line. She shouldn't have said that. But she did. And none of you contradicted her. You all just sat there nodding, agreeing that my career was a waste, that I was embarrassing you, that I needed to be cut off like some kind of trust fund addict who couldn't face reality. My voice was rising now, 8 years of swallowed frustrations finally breaking free. Well, guess what? I did face reality. I faced it every day in that classroom with kids who have every reason to give up, but don't because someone finally believes in them. That's reality, Mom. Not your country club friends and their opinions about my life choices. Emma, please just listen. No. You listen. I gripped the steering wheel with my free hand, knuckles white. I love you. I love Dad and Daniel too. But I don't need your approval anymore. I thought I did. I thought maybe if I could just explain it right, just make you understand, you'd see what I see. But I can't make you see it. The governor's announcement didn't change what I do or how much it matters. It just changed how you perceive it. It changed more than that. My father's voice came on the line. He must have been listening on speaker. Emma, I was wrong. Completely wrong. I let my own definitions of success blind me to what you've been achieving. That student, Tyler, his mother called the news station. They just aired her interview. She said you saved her family. My throat tightened. She said that before you, every teacher had given up on her son. That he was unteachable. But you stayed after school with him 3 days a week for a year. A whole year. You paid for extra workbooks yourself. You called her every Friday with progress updates. You went to his baseball games. His voice cracked. When was the last time I went to one of your school events? When was the last time I asked about your students' names, or what you were teaching? I have no idea what happens in your classroom, Emma. And that's my failure, not yours. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, tears falling freely now. I called in every favor I had to get Daniel his first job interview, he continued. I've been bragging about his partnership to everyone who'll listen. But you've been building something meaningful completely on your own, and I couldn't even see it. I couldn't see it because I was too busy being disappointed that you weren't building what I built. Dad, let me finish. Please. He took a breath. Your mother and we came from nothing. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through night school. Your mother cleaned houses to help pay for this house we're sitting in. We wanted you and Daniel to have everything we didn't. Security, respect, money in the bank. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that those were just means to an end. The real goal was supposed to be happiness. Purpose. Making a difference. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. You've been doing that all along. And instead of celebrating it, I tried to force you into my mold. I told you that your purpose wasn't enough because it didn't come with a corner office. I'm ashamed of myself, Emma. Deeply ashamed. I couldn't speak. The words I'd needed to hear for so long were finally coming, and they felt both healing and heartbreaking. Will you come to dinner Sunday? My mother asked, her voice small. Please, let us celebrate you properly. Let us start over. I wiped my eyes, thought about Sunday night, the judgment, the ultimatums, the feeling of being fundamentally unseen by the people who were supposed to know me best. And then I thought about what Janet had said. It took years. And it still hurts sometimes. I'll think about it, I said finally. But Mom, Dad, if I come, it can't be about the award. It has to be about understanding what I actually do. About respecting my choices, even when they don't make sense to you. Can you do that? Yes, they said in unison. And one more thing. You need to apologize to Tyler's mother. She's probably terrified right now, having her story on the news. She's probably worried about privacy and attention. You need to understand that these aren't just statistics in my feel-good teaching story. They're real people, and they're why I do this. We will, my father promised. We'll do whatever it takes. I hung up and sat in my car for a long time, watching the other teachers leave the parking lot, watching the sun start its descent toward the horizon. My phone continued buzzing with messages. News outlets requesting interviews, colleagues sending congratulations, former students reaching out. And then I saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Miss Emma, this is Tyler's mom. I saw the news. I just wanted to say thank you for everything. You changed our whole life. When they asked if I wanted to interview, I said yes because everyone needs to know what teachers like you do. I hope that was okay. You're our hero. I read it 3 times, and then I understood something fundamental. The governor's award was nice. My parents' apology would be nice. But this message from a mother whose son I'd helped, this was why nothing else had ever mattered. I started my car and drove home, but I didn't make it there. My phone rang again, and this time it was Principal Henderson. Emma, I know you just left, but you need to turn on Channel 7. Right now. Something in his voice made my heart race. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. But the story is getting bigger than we anticipated. I pulled into a parking lot and opened the news app on my phone. The video had already been viewed over 1 million times. Someone had created a hashtag #ThankATeacher. Parents were sharing their own stories about teachers who'd made a difference. The governor had retweeted the story with additional commentary about increasing teacher salaries. But that wasn't what Principal Henderson wanted me to see. The news anchor was interviewing Tyler Rodriguez and his mother, and Tyler was wearing his best shirt, the one he usually saved for school pictures. His eyes were bright with excitement and something that looked like pride. Miss Emma is the best teacher ever, he was saying into the microphone. She never gave up on me, even when I wanted to give up on myself. She told me I was smart, and she made me believe it. His mother's hand rested on his shoulder, and when the camera panned to her face, I saw tears streaming down her cheeks. My son's teacher spent her own money, her own time, her own heart on my boy. She did that while making less money than I do cleaning offices. She did that because she cares. And now the whole state knows what I've known all year. She's an angel. The anchor turned to face the camera. This story has captivated our state today. A teacher who sacrificed everything to help a struggling student, who worked tirelessly without recognition, who embodies everything we claim to value about education. But here's the question our viewers are asking tonight. Why does it take a governor's award for us to notice? Why aren't we celebrating teachers like Emma Thompson every single day? She paused for effect, and I realized that something significant was shifting in the cultural conversation. We'll be following this story closely, the anchor continued. And we'd like to invite Emma Thompson herself to join us on Monday morning for a live interview. Emma, if you're watching, please call our newsroom. We think your story needs to be heard. My phone immediately rang again. A number with the news station's area code. I stared at it, thinking about Sunday night at my parents' table. About being told I was wasting my potential. About the assumption that my life was a failure because it looked different than the one they'd imagined for me. And then I thought about Tyler's face on that screen. About his mother calling me an angel. About the hashtag spreading across social media. About the conversation beginning to shift. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about every teacher in every underfunded school who spent their own money on supplies, who stayed late without extra pay, who loved their students fiercely and received criticism instead of celebration. I answered the phone. This is Emma Thompson. Miss Thompson, thank you so much for calling. We'd love to have you on our morning show Monday. Would you be available? I thought about my classroom. About the 24 third graders who would be buzzing with excitement on Monday. About the opportunity to change the narrative around teaching, even just a little bit. Yes, I said. I'll be there. But I had no idea that by Monday morning, everything would spiral into something far bigger than a local news interview. I had no idea that the governor's announcement had set off a chain reaction that would force my family to confront truths they'd been avoiding for years. And I had no idea that the most difficult conversation was still ahead of me. Saturday morning arrived with the particular intensity of having slept 3 hours and woken up to 847 unread emails. I sat at my kitchen table in my pajamas, coffee cooling in my mug, scrolling through messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Former college roommates, so proud of you. High school classmates, you were always going to do something amazing. Distant relatives, your grandmother would have been so proud. But the one that made me actually laugh out loud came from Daniel's wife Victoria, sent at 2:17 a.m. Emma, I owe you an apology. Can we talk? I was still staring at it, trying to decide whether to respond, when my doorbell rang. It was 7 a.m. on a Saturday. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a brief, paranoid moment, I thought it might be a reporter. The news station had promised to keep my address private, but you never knew. I looked through the peephole, and my heart sank. My mother stood there, holding a casserole dish and looking smaller than I'd ever seen her look. My father was behind her, his shoulders hunched in a way that was completely unlike his usual commanding presence. I opened the door. We brought breakfast, my mother said, and her voice wavered. Your father made his chocolate chip pancakes. The ones you used to love. I stood there in my old teaching conference t-shirt and sweatpants, aware that my hair was probably standing up at odd angles, aware that I hadn't brushed my teeth yet, aware that 24 hours ago these people had made me feel worthless, and now they were at my door with pancakes. It's 7 in the morning, I said. We couldn't sleep, my father admitted. We've been up all night talking. Can we please come in? I stepped aside and let them enter my small apartment, the one my mother had called that tiny place with such disdain just days ago. I watched her take in the space. The second-hand furniture, the walls covered in student artwork, the bookshelf overflowing with teaching materials and children's books, the desk in the corner buried under lesson plans. She set the casserole dish on my small kitchen counter and turned to face me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup-free. I'd never seen my mother without makeup outside of the house before. Your apartment is lovely, she said quietly. It's very you. Mom, you don't have to. No, I mean it. Look at this. She gestured to a bulletin board on my wall where I'd pinned letters from students. These are from your kids, aren't they? I nodded. The board was covered in crayon drawings, thank you notes with invented spellings, and photographs from classroom celebrations. It was my most prized possession. She walked closer, reading them. Dear Miss Emma, you are the best teacher in the whole world. Love, Miguel. A tear ran down her cheek. Thank you for helping me learn to read. Now I can read books to my little sister. Love, Jasmine. My father joined her at the board, his jaw working like he was trying to control his emotions. Miss Emma, my dad says you are an angel. I think he is right. You make me feel smart. Love, Tyler. The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. How long have you had this board? My father asked finally. Since my first year teaching. Students give me notes, and I keep them all. 8 years of notes. He touched the edge of a faded drawing from my first class. 8 years of children telling you that you changed their lives, and we spent Sunday night telling you that your life was a waste. My mother made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Please sit down, I said, because watching them stand there falling apart in my kitchen was more than I could handle. I'll make coffee. We sat at my small table. The same table where I graded papers late into the night, where I planned lessons, where I'd cried over my bills just 2 days ago. My father's casserole dish sat between us, still covered, the smell of chocolate chip pancakes filling my apartment. We need to tell you something, my father said. Something we should have told you years ago. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, waiting. When your mother and I decided to cut you off, he continued, it wasn't really about the money. It wasn't even really about your career. Then what was it about? My mother reached across the table and took my hand. Hers was shaking. It was about us being terrified that we'd failed you, that we'd raised you wrong somehow, that you'd chosen teaching because we didn't give you the confidence to aim higher. I stared at her. What? Your father and I, we fought so hard to climb out of poverty. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 siblings. We shared clothes. We ate government cheese. I wore shoes with holes in them because there wasn't money for new ones. She swallowed hard. When I met your father, he was working 3 jobs and going to night school. We built everything from nothing. Everything. I know this, Mom. You've told me. But what we didn't tell you is why it made us so crazy when you chose teaching. My father leaned forward. My mother was a teacher, Emma. Elementary school, just like you. She worked in an inner-city school in Chicago, and she loved it with everything she had. But she died when she was 52 because she couldn't afford the medication she needed for her diabetes. She chose teaching over security, and it killed her. The air went out of my lungs. I watched my mother sacrifice everything for her students, he continued, his voice breaking. I watched her spend her own money on classroom supplies while we ate store-brand everything at home. I watched her stay late every single night to tutor kids whose parents couldn't help them. And then I watched her get sick and refuse to go to the doctor because we didn't have insurance, and by the time she finally went, it was too late. My mother squeezed my hand tighter. When you told us you wanted to be a teacher, all your father could see was history repeating itself. All he could see was you making the same choice his mother made, and him losing you the same way he lost her. I looked at my father, this strong, successful, intimidating man, and saw tears streaming down his face for the first time in my life. I never told you about my mother because it hurt too much, he said. I built my whole life around making sure my children would never have to struggle the way she struggled, the way I struggled. And when you chose teaching anyway, I felt like I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. I felt like all my work had been for nothing. Dad! I couldn't find words. I'd known my paternal grandmother had died young, but my father never talked about her. I'd assumed it was just too painful, not that it was wrapped up in all of this. At the dinner, my mother said, when you talked about Tyler Rodriguez and his mother crying, I saw your father's face change. I knew he was seeing his own mother in you. And he was terrified. So you decided cutting me off would. What? Force me to quit teaching. My father shook his head. I don't know what we thought. We were desperate. We were scared. We thought if we made it impossible for you to sustain yourself financially, you'd have to choose a more stable career. We thought we were saving you. He laughed bitterly. God, we thought we were saving you. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. Every conversation with my parents about my career, every disappointed comment, every comparison to Daniel, all of it had been rooted in a fear they'd never expressed, a trauma they'd never shared. Why didn't you just tell me this? I asked. Why didn't you tell me about your mother? Why didn't you explain what you were afraid of? Because I was ashamed, my father admitted. I was ashamed that I couldn't save my own mother. I was ashamed that all my success came too late to help her. And I was ashamed that I was trying to control your life because of my own unresolved grief. My mother pulled out her phone and opened a photo album. Look, she said, showing me a picture of a young woman standing in front of a chalkboard, surrounded by smiling children. This is your grandmother, Emma Thompson. She taught 3rd grade for 27 years. I stared at the photo. The woman looked like my father around the eyes, but she had my smile. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, and the joy on her face was unmistakable. She looks like you, my mother said softly. Same eyes. Same smile. When we saw you on TV yesterday standing with Tyler and his mother, you could have been her twin. I teach 3rd grade, I whispered, the connection suddenly overwhelming. I teach the same grade she taught. You have her gift, my father said. When the governor was talking about you yesterday, about your dedication, your innovation, your belief in your students, I heard people describing my mother. And I realized something. He paused, wiping his eyes. My mother didn't die because she was a teacher. She died because our country doesn't value teachers enough to pay them living wages or give them health care. That's not her failure. That's not your failure. That's a societal failure. And that award you won, my mother added, the $50,000 for your classroom, the scholarship, the recognition, that's what your grandmother deserved. That's what every teacher deserves. You're not making her mistake, Emma. You're doing what she did, but you're fighting for the recognition and support that should have been there all along. I thought about the interview scheduled for Monday morning, about the hashtag spreading across social media, about the conversation beginning to shift around teacher compensation and respect. The governor's award came with more than money, I said slowly. It came with a platform. People are listening now. Not just to me, but to the bigger conversation about how we treat teachers. My father nodded. And you can use that platform. You can fight for the things my mother never got to fight for. You can make the system better for the next generation of teachers. But I need you to understand something, I said, looking at both of them. Even without the award, even without the recognition, what I'm doing matters. Tyler Rodriguez's life is different because of me. So is Jasmine's. So is Miguel's. Those 24 kids in my classroom, they're the point. Not the money. Not the status. Them. We understand that now, my mother said. We should have understood it 8 years ago. We should have asked about your students' names. We should have come to your classroom. We should have seen what you were building instead of what you weren't earning. We can't get those 8 years back, my father added. But we'd like to start over if you'll let us. Really start over. Not with pancakes and apologies, but with genuine interest in your life and your work. I looked at these two people who'd raised me, who'd wounded me, who were now sitting at my table with their hearts broken open and their fear exposed. And I thought about Tyler's mother, about how she'd fought through her own fear and pride to let me help her son. Okay, I said. But on one condition. Anything, they said together. You come to my classroom. Not for a special event. Not for a performance. You come on a regular Tuesday, and you sit in the back and you watch what I actually do. You meet my students. You see why the award matters less than the work. My father's face crumpled. I would be honored. And Dad. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I think you should tell me more about your mother. About what she was like as a teacher. About what she loved about it. Because I'd like to understand where I came from. He nodded, unable to speak. We ate chocolate chip pancakes at my small table, and my mother asked about my students by name. My father wanted to know about my reading intervention program. They asked real questions and listened to real answers, and for the first time in years, I felt like my parents were actually seeing me. But our fragile peace was about to be interrupted by something none of us anticipated. My phone rang at 10:30 a.m. It was Principal Henderson again, and the urgency in his voice made my stomach drop. Emma, you need to see this. Check your email. Now. I opened my laptop while my parents watched, confused. At the top of my inbox was a message from the superintendent of schools, CC'd to the entire district leadership team. The subject line read, regarding Emma Thompson and the governor's award. My hands went cold as I clicked it open. Dear staff, it began. As many of you know, Emma Thompson from Jefferson Elementary was honored by the governor yesterday with a Teacher Excellence Award. While we are proud of this recognition, we must also address some concerns that have been brought to our attention. I scrolled down, my heart hammering. Several parents and community members have contacted our office expressing worry that Ms. Thompson's newfound media attention may be disruptive to the educational environment. Additionally, we have received questions about the propriety of Ms. Thompson discussing individual students publicly without proper authorization. What? I said out loud. I didn't discuss anyone publicly. The governor's office submitted the nomination. Tyler's mom chose to do the interview. My father read over my shoulder, his business instincts kicking in immediately. Keep reading. Therefore, effective immediately, we are conducting a review of Ms. Thompson's classroom practices to ensure all protocols were followed regarding student privacy and proper channels for award nominations. Until this review is complete, Ms. Thompson is asked to refrain from all media appearances and public statements about her classroom or students. The email ended with, "We appreciate your cooperation in this matter as we work to maintain the integrity of our educational programs." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. They're investigating me. They're actually investigating me. This is retaliation, my father said immediately. Someone in that district office is embarrassed that a governor's award went to a teacher they probably overlooked for years, and now they're trying to control the narrative. My mother pulled out her phone. Who do we call? This is absurd. Emma did nothing wrong. But I was remembering something. A conversation from 2 months ago, when Principal Henderson had asked for permission to submit my name for the award. I'd said yes without really thinking about it, assuming nothing would come of it. But had we followed proper protocols? Had we gotten written permission from Tyler's mother? Or had it all been informal, handled through quick conversations and email exchanges that might not look official enough under scrutiny? Emma, my father said, his hand on my shoulder. Look at me. This is not about protocols or privacy. This is about power and control. And we're not going to let them bury you for succeeding. My phone buzzed. The news station. Ms. Thompson, we've heard about the district's statement. We'd like to move up your interview to this afternoon, instead of Monday. We believe this story needs to be told now. Another buzz. A text from Janet Kim. Emma, half the teachers in the district are furious about this. We're organizing. Don't let them silence you. Another buzz. Tyler's mother. Miss Emma, I just heard. This is my fault. I shouldn't have done that interview. I'm so sorry. And finally, a text from Daniel. I'm calling my lawyer friends. This is bullshit and we're going to fight it. I looked up at my parents, at their faces full of fierce protectiveness and barely contained rage, and I realized something. This was no longer just about me defending my career choice to my family. This was about standing up to a system that claimed to value teachers, while, simultaneously, trying to silence them the moment they received recognition. The question was I brave enough to fight back? The news station studio was smaller than I'd imagined, all harsh lights and cables snaking across the floor. I sat in a chair across from anchor Michelle Torres, a microphone clipped to my cardigan, trying to ignore the cameras pointed at my face. It was 2 p.m. on Saturday. 12 hours ago, I'd been celebrating a governor's award. Now I was here, about to do an interview that could either vindicate me or end my career. My parents sat in the green room. Daniel had shown up an hour ago with 2 lawyers, one specializing in education law, one in media relations. Janet Kim had texted that she and 15 other Jefferson teachers were organizing a protest outside the district office for Monday morning. Tyler's mother had called me 3 times, crying, insisting this was her fault. The whole thing had spiraled so far beyond my control that I felt like I was watching it happen to someone else. 30 seconds, a producer called out. Michelle leaned forward, her expression kind but serious. Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but what you're about to do is important. The district is counting on you being too scared to speak. Don't give them that satisfaction. I nodded, my throat too tight to respond. And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The producer counted down with his fingers, then pointed at Michelle. Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Torres, and thank you for joining us for this special report. Yesterday, our state celebrated 5 exceptional teachers with the Governor's Teacher Excellence Award. But today, one of those teachers, Emma Thompson from Jefferson Elementary, faces investigation by her own school district for the very work that earned her recognition. The camera swung to me, and I forced myself to breathe. Emma, thank you for joining us under what I know are difficult circumstances. Thank you for having me, I managed. Let's start with the basic facts. You were honored by the governor yesterday for your work with a struggling student. Can you tell us about that? I thought about the superintendent's email, about the warnings to refrain from discussing students. But then I thought about Tyler's face on TV, about his mother choosing to speak publicly, about the truth being more important than fear. Tyler Rodriguez came into my 3rd grade classroom reading at a 1st grade level. I began. He'd been labeled as having behavioral problems and learning disabilities. Previous teachers had essentially given up on him. But I saw something different. I saw a bright, curious kid who'd been failed by a system that didn't have time for students who learned differently. So what did you do? I stayed after school with him 3 days a week for an entire school year. We worked on reading strategies. We found books he actually cared about. I called his mother every Friday with progress updates. I went to his baseball games because I wanted him to know that someone believed in him. My voice grew stronger. And by the end of the year, he was reading at grade level. Now he's in advanced math. His mother cries every time she talks about it because she genuinely didn't think it was possible. Michelle nodded. And the governor recognized this work with a $50,000 grant for your classroom, a scholarship for you to pursue a master's degree, and the designation as a state master teacher. That's extraordinary. It is. And I'm deeply honored. But I paused, knowing what I was about to say would make the district furious. The recognition shouldn't be extraordinary. What I did should be normal. Every teacher should have small enough class sizes to give students individual attention. Every teacher should be paid enough to not need second jobs, so they have energy for after-school tutoring. Every teacher should have the resources to buy books and materials without using their own money. But they don't. No, they don't. Teachers across this country spend an average of $500 a year of their own money on classroom supplies. We work 10 to 12-hour days and get paid for 7. We're blamed for every failing in the education system while being given inadequate resources to fix those failings. And when one of us succeeds despite all of that and gets recognized for it, we get investigated. I saw the producer's eyes widen. I'd gone off script. But I couldn't stop now. The superintendent's email said I'm being reviewed for discussing students publicly without authorization. But I didn't discuss Tyler publicly. The governor's office submitted my nomination based on documentation I provided for an award application, which is standard practice. Tyler's mother chose to speak to the media because she wanted people to know what teachers do. She exercised her First Amendment right to tell her own family's story. So why do you think you're being investigated? I looked directly at the camera. Because I made the district look bad. They've underfunded Jefferson Elementary for years. Our textbooks are 15 years old. We don't have a school counselor. Our playground equipment is broken. But instead of using the governor's recognition as an opportunity to celebrate and request more funding, they're trying to control the narrative by silencing me. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. And I can prove it. I pulled out my phone, even though the producer was frantically gesturing for me not to. I have emails going back 3 years requesting basic supplies, paper, pencils, books, that were denied due to budget constraints. I have documentation showing that my classroom grant request for reading materials was rejected. But the district found money to renovate the central office and give administrators raises. Michelle's eyebrows shot up. You're saying the district prioritized administrative comfort over student resources? I'm saying that districts across this country make those choices every day. And then they wonder why teachers burn out, why students fall through the cracks, why education outcomes don't improve. I felt 8 years of frustration pouring out. The governor gave me an award for doing extraordinary work with limited resources. The district is investigating me because they don't want anyone asking why the resources were limited in the first place. What do you want people to understand about this situation? I thought about my grandmother, the teacher who died too young. About my father's tears this morning. About Tyler's mother's gratitude. About the bulletin board in my apartment covered in notes from students whose lives I'd touched. I want people to understand that teachers are not the problem. We're the solution working with our hands tied behind our backs. We're the ones staying late, spending our own money, loving kids who need love, teaching kids who need teaching, all while being paid poverty wages and blamed for systemic failures. My voice broke. I want people to understand that if we actually valued education in this country, no teacher would be choosing between buying classroom supplies and paying their rent. No teacher would be working 2 jobs. No teacher would be too afraid to speak up about inadequate resources because they might lose their job. Are you afraid you might lose your job? I paused. 24 hours ago, the answer would have been yes. But something had shifted. Maybe it was my parents' apology. Maybe it was Tyler's mother's courage. Maybe it was finally understanding that silence only protected the status quo. Yes, I said honestly. I'm terrified. I love my students. I love my school. The thought of not walking into room 207 on Monday morning makes me want to cry. I wiped my eyes, not caring that I was crying on live television. But I'm more afraid of staying silent. Because if teachers don't speak up about these conditions, nothing will ever change. And the next generation of Tyler Rodriguez's will fall through the cracks because we were too scared to fight for them. Michelle let the silence hang for a moment, and I could see she was moved. What happens now? I don't know. The district's investigation could lead to disciplinary action. I could be fired. But I looked at the camera again, thinking about all the teachers watching, all the parents watching, all the people who'd never really thought about what happens inside underfunded public schools. But I'm going to keep telling the truth. About what we need. About what our students deserve. about how we've built an entire education system that claims to value children while refusing to fund their futures. Emma Thompson, thank you for your courage in speaking with us today. We'll continue to follow this story. Thank you. The camera light went off, and I slumped in my chair, suddenly exhausted. Michelle unclipped her microphone. That was one of the most powerful interviews I've ever conducted. Whatever happens next, you spoke truth to power, and that matters. My phone was already exploding with notifications. I walked back to the green room in a daze, and my father pulled me into a hug. Your grandmother would have been so proud, he whispered. My mother was crying again, but she was smiling. You were magnificent. Daniel showed his phone to his lawyers. It's already gone viral. Over 100,000 views in 15 minutes. One of the lawyers, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, looked up from her tablet. Emma, you need to prepare yourself. The district is going to come at you hard for this. You essentially accused them of financial mismanagement on live television. Can they fire me for that? They can try. But you've got public opinion on your side now, and that matters. She scrolled through something. Look at this. The teachers' union just released a statement supporting you. 3 state legislators are calling for an audit of the district's budget. The hashtag Stand With Emma is trending. I sat down, overwhelmed. I didn't mean to start a movement. I just wanted to tell the truth. Sometimes that's all it takes, Patricia said. My phone rang. Principal Henderson. I answered with trembling hands. Emma, he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. I just watched your interview. I need you to know that every teacher at Jefferson is behind you. We're all behind you. Thank you, I whispered. And Emma? I've been a principal for 15 years. I've watched good teachers get beaten down by this system. Watched them leave the profession because they couldn't afford to stay. Watched them swallow their frustrations because speaking up felt too dangerous. You just did what all of us have wanted to do for years. You told the truth, consequences be damned. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. That means you understand the stakes. But you're not alone. Whatever happens Monday, you're not alone. When I hung up, Daniel was showing me his phone. Look at this, Emma. Just look. It was a GoFundMe page titled Support Emma Thompson and Teachers Like Her. The description read, Emma Thompson is facing retaliation for speaking truth about our education system. Let's show her that we value teachers who fight for our children. I didn't start this, I said quickly. I know. A parent from Jefferson did. It went up 20 minutes ago. He refreshed the page. It's already raised $40,000. I stared at the number, watching it climb in real time. Donations from across the state, across the country. Teachers contributing $20 with notes like, thank you for saying what we can't. Parents contributing $50 with notes like, my daughter had a teacher like you. Anonymous donors contributing thousands with notes like, education matters. My mother's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, and her face went pale. It's Patricia Richardson, the woman from the charity gala. The one who'd made the snide comment about me not getting into graduate school. Don't answer it, I said. No. My mother's jaw set in a way I recognized, the look she got when she was about to do something difficult. I want to hear what she has to say. She answered on speaker. Hello, Patricia. Helen, I just saw the news. About your daughter. Patricia's voice was tight, controlled. I wanted to call and, well, I wanted to apologize. Silence. Last month at the gala I made a comment. About Emma being a teacher. I implied it was a failure. I was wrong. She paused. My grandson is struggling in school. His reading scores are terrible. His parents hired expensive tutors, but nothing's working. And watching that interview today, watching Emma talk about what she did for that student, I realized my grandson needs a teacher like her. Not expensive tutors. Not test prep programs. A teacher who actually cares. My mother's eyes met mine. Emma is an exceptional teacher. I can see that now. And I'm ashamed that it took a governor's award and a viral interview for me to see it. Teachers like Emma, they're invaluable. And we treat them like they're disposable. Patricia's voice cracked. Please tell her I'm sorry. And please tell her that if she needs anything, letters of support, testimonials, anything, I'll provide it. After they hung up, my mother just stared at her phone. I spent so many years worried about what Patricia Richardson thought. About what all of them thought. About their opinions and their judgments. She looked at me. And none of it mattered. None of it was real. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Emma, this is Governor Mitchell's office. The governor would like to speak with you Monday morning before you return to school. Can you come to the Capitol at 8 a.m.? I showed it to the lawyers. Patricia whistled low. The governor wants to meet with you personally. Emma, this story just went from local to national. And she was right. By Sunday morning, the interview had been viewed over 5 million times. Major news outlets were picking it up. Education policy experts were weighing in. The hashtag had evolved. Now it was hashtag Teachers Truth, with educators across the country sharing their own stories of inadequate funding, impossible expectations, and the love for students that kept them going despite it all. Sunday dinner happened at my apartment this time. My parents, Daniel, Janet, Kim, Principal Henderson, and Tyler's mother all crammed into my tiny space, eating takeout and watching the news coverage. This is bigger than any of us anticipated, Principal Henderson said, scrolling through his phone. The district is in damage control mode. The superintendent has been fielding calls all weekend from concerned parents, angry teachers, and reporters demanding comments. What do you think they'll do? I asked. He met my eyes. Honestly, I think they're trying to figure out how to save face. They can't fire you now, not with this much public attention. But they can't just back down either, or they look weak. So what's the middle ground? I don't know. But we'll find out soon enough. Tyler's mother had been quiet most of the evening, sitting in the corner with her hands folded. Finally, she spoke up. Miss Emma, I need to say something. The room went quiet. When I did that interview, I didn't think about what might happen to you. I just wanted people to know how good you are. How much you changed our lives. Tears ran down her face. If you lose your job because of me. Stop. I knelt in front of her, taking her hands. You didn't do anything wrong. You told your truth. Your son's truth. That's not only okay, it's necessary. The system wants us all to stay quiet. Parents, teachers, students. But change only happens when we're brave enough to speak up. But what if they fire you? I thought about that. Really thought about it. 24 hours ago, the idea of losing my classroom had felt like the end of the world. But now, then I'll find another way to fight for kids like Tyler, I said. Maybe I'll work for the teachers' union. Maybe I'll advocate for education policy reform. Maybe I'll write a book about what really happens in underfunded schools. I smiled at her. But I won't stop fighting. That's what your interview taught me. You were scared to speak up, but you did it anyway because it mattered. I can do the same. She hugged me and I heard her whisper, "Thank you." That night, after everyone left, I sat at my kitchen table with my father. He'd stayed behind, asking if we could talk alone. I need to tell you about your grandmother, he said. The whole story. And so he did. He told me about Emma Thompson, who taught 3rd grade in Chicago for 27 years. About how she'd wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare lessons, how she'd stay until 6 p.m. tutoring students. About how she'd spend her summers at educational conferences learning new techniques, how she'd organize fundraisers to buy books for her classroom. He told me about the day she'd collapsed during class, about how she'd been hiding symptoms of diabetes for months because she couldn't afford to miss work or pay for a doctor. About how by the time she was hospitalized, her organs were failing. About how she'd died surrounded by get-well cards from students, telling my father with her last breaths that teaching had been the greatest privilege of her life. She was 52, he said, his voice breaking. She could have lived another 30 years. But the system worked her to death and paid her so little that she couldn't afford basic health care. I'm sorry, Dad. Don't be sorry. Just promise me something. He gripped my hand. Promise me you'll keep fighting. Not just for better pay and better conditions, though you absolutely should fight for those. But fight to change the system so that no teacher ever has to choose between their health and their students again. I promise. Your grandmother would have loved you so much, he said, pulling out his phone. I have something for you. He showed me a video, grainy, old, clearly transferred from VHS. In it, a younger version of my father was filming his mother's classroom. Emma Thompson stood at the front, animated and joyful, teaching a lesson about fractions with such enthusiasm that even through the decades-old footage, I could feel her energy. She made learning magic, my father said. Just like you do. I watched the video 3 times, memorizing her gestures, her smile, the way she called on students, the way they responded to her with eagerness and trust. Can I keep this? I asked. It's yours. I should have given it to you years ago. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Monday morning, about the meeting with the governor, about returning to my classroom, about whatever consequences might be waiting. But mostly I thought about Emma Thompson, about the legacy she'd left, about the fight she'd started without even knowing it. I thought about Tyler Rodriguez and his mother, about 24 third graders who needed me, about the thousands of teachers watching and waiting to see if speaking up would cost me everything. And I knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next, I would face it the same way my grandmother had faced every challenge in her classroom. With courage, with truth, and with an unwavering belief that education matters more than fear. Monday morning was coming, and I was ready. The meeting with Governor Mitchell lasted 2 hours. He'd seen the interview, read the emails I'd referenced, and talked to his education advisors. By the time I left his office, he'd committed to proposing a comprehensive education funding reform bill and had asked me to serve on an advisory committee. The district dropped their investigation that afternoon. The superintendent issued a statement praising my dedication and announcing a full audit of school funding allocation. I walked back into room 207 on Tuesday morning to 24 screaming, cheering third graders and a classroom that had been transformed. The $50,000 grant had arrived, and Principal Henderson had helped me order new books, tablets, educational games, and supplies. Tyler Rodriguez gave me a drawing he'd made. Me standing in front of our classroom, surrounded by hearts, with the words "Best Teacher Ever" written in careful cursive. My parents came to visit that Thursday. They sat in the back of my classroom during math time, and I watched my father cry as he saw me teaching fractions the same way his mother had in that old video. After school, he pulled me aside. "I saw her in you today. The passion, the joy, the magic." He hugged me tightly. "Thank you for keeping her legacy alive." 6 months later, the education funding reform bill passed. Teacher salaries across the state increased by 15%. Every school received grants for classroom supplies. The teachers' union was invited to participate in policy decisions. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. And I was there in room 207 teaching third grade, staying after school with students who needed extra help, buying books for my reading corner, loving my job despite its challenges. Because some callings aren't about the money or the status or even the recognition. Some callings are about looking into a child's eyes and seeing potential that no one else has bothered to notice. Some callings are about being the person who refuses to give up, who stays late, who believes fiercely in the power of education to change lives. My parents had been right about one thing. I could have made more money doing something else. But I wouldn't have made more of a difference. And in the end, that's what mattered most.